Lord of the Mysteries, A Time Traveler in the Fourth Age. By author Kai Yun-ji. Chapter 186-201. Chapter 186 Royal Infighting. Above the gray fog, Mr. Fool breathed a sigh of relief after returning to his home. Now that he was safe, he happily took out his spoils and found that the card of blasphemy had been unlocked, and even the password had been omitted. Mr. Fool felt that his hard work had not been in vain. On the card of blasphemy, Emperor Russell was wearing armor, a cloak, a crown, and holding a scepter, sitting high on the throne. His appearance was very cool. After the card was opened, the potion formula and detailed description of the Black Emperor's path were turned page by page on the surface. The only thing missing is the contents of Sequence 2 and Sequence 0. The Emperor's diary said that each blasphemous card should contain complete knowledge of the entire path. What did that woman do? Without saying anything, Klein began to divine the contents of the blasphemy card before it was modified. Backland. Shah-Ir returned to this international metropolis by boat. There were a lot more people picking him up this time. Especially Mr. Sesama, the sword of the goddess, was staring at the huge violin case in Shur's hand. He had already sensed the aura of the holy sword. This sword has been of great help to me. Shah-Ir returned the holy object in his hand without any reluctance. Let's go, Archbishop Anthony is waiting for you. Bishop Electra looked at Shah-Ir with a headache. He was glad the student was back, but it would have been better if his story hadn't been so legendary. Shah-Ir nodded, got on the carriage, and followed everyone back to St. Samuel's Cathedral. Daly, sitting next to him, asked in surprise. Are you Sequence 6? I have to thank the goddess for this. Shah-Ir drew a crimson moon on his chest. Where exactly were you, exiled, to? We couldn't find it no matter how hard we looked. Daly's problem is also of concern to the other two gentlemen. I'm not sure. It was pitch black and filled with the aura of curses. However, I was able to sense the power of the goddess through the holy objects. Later, I broke into the underworld and was able to find it through the underworld. Shah-Ir knew nothing about anything. Archbishop Anthony might understand. Sesama said after a moment's hesitation. You are already a Sequence 6 Beander. Combined with your previous contributions, you can be promoted to a bishop of a certain diocese or a night watchman deacon ahead of schedule. Archbishop Anthony actually didn't know where Shah-Ir had gone. He just had some rough guesses, but one thing was certain. This little guy had been recognized by the sacred object of the goddess, that is, he had been recognized by the goddess. Why don't we arrange this quickly? First, you can be promoted to bishop or deacon. After reaching Sequence 5 and taking control of a holy relic, you can be directly promoted to archbishop or high-level deacon. Shah-Ir has almost no competitors on the path of the hanged man. As long as he does not have any problems, he will definitely have a chance to be promoted to a demigod in the future, and then he will be one of the highest-level clergymen under the Pope. What did I say last time? Shah-Ir was so moved by the sincerity of the Church of Evernight that he almost wanted to give up his status as a Sequence 1 Archangel and stay in Backland, in St. Samuel's Cathedral. The people of Lowen, who have lived for decades or even hundreds of years, will wait until Mr. Fool liquidates the witch church in the future and take the opportunity to release a Sequence 3 immortal witch. This will even solve the problem of lifespan. It is simply perfect. In fact, the church is not unconcerned about the problems in Lowen. It's just that dealing with a country is more troublesome than solving extraordinary incidents. Archbishop Anthony's meaning was very clear. What happened last time was over, and it would be impolite to mention it again. Archbishop Anthony, I have never thought about facing these extraordinary events before. I am not interested in them. When I was in seminary, all I thought about was how to spread the faith of the goddess and receive those believers who came to the church to pray. Later, my desire to become a transcendent was just a desire for mystery. I longed for this power, and I thought it was just my personal matter, it was my freedom, and I didn't think about it at all. I will also learn shooting, fighting, and analyzing extraordinary events, and stand up when faced with extraordinary events. Shah-Ir's words revealed some sincerity. If he had not joined the Church of Darkness, he probably would not have dealt with any extraordinary events. He would probably be like Miss Justice, embarking on the extraordinary path just for personal satisfaction. Even if he joined the church just for fun, the attributes of the church itself still played some positive role. This experience is indeed a good spice of life. That's the mission of the church. We walk in the night, watching the darkness before dawn. Archbishop Anthony was very satisfied with Shah Iyer's sigh. He seemed to be a little emotional as well and said a few more words. After this incident, Shah Iyer's position in St. Samuel's Cathedral was basically stabilized. Just like that, Shah Iyer had a brand new office. The shadows under his feet automatically came to life and prepared black tea and small cakes for him. The Backland daily newspapers were also spread out on the table. Finally, I can live a simple life like an ordinary noble young master. What kind of life was he leading in the kingdom of Constant during the Fourth Era? Everything from food and clothing to shelter and transportation was of the highest quality, and there was practically nothing the Church of Earth couldn't come up with. The entire kingdom is extremely feudal in its feudal parts and extremely open in its open parts. There are elves, druids, vampires, witches and so on. No one knew where Rhodes's desire to act came from. He took being a butler seriously, and showed his presence every day like he was signing in and punching in. If he hadn't been beaten by lightning, he would have been a little lost. Shah Iyer flipped open the newspaper in his hand, learning about the latest news about Backland. The third Prince of Lowen, Edisic, stood with the new party and began to follow the Conservative Party, mainly subtly opposing the Lowen royal family. A series of reform systems began to be proposed. Although they were certainly not passed at the cabinet meeting, the news appeared in the newspapers. Of course, there is also the influence of Shah Iyer behind this. The Lowen royal family, which appears to be a conservative party, actually wants to support reform. But they couldn't do it openly, especially King George III couldn't make concessions openly. According to the royal family's original plan, with the Backland Smog and Prince Edisic colluding with the witch church and committing suicide, the Lowen royal family had a black mark. In order to calm the matter, they had no choice but to make concessions. And now, as the third prince and a member of the royal family, Edisic, regardless of whether he is competing with the eldest prince for the throne or something else, has directly begun to sing a different tune from the Conservative Party, or to hook up with some members of the new party, and began to contact some members with church backgrounds, such as the Steam Church background. George III's two sons, the eldest prince and the third prince, were already planning to fight. Chapter 187 George III, the goddess supports me. George III's two sons, the eldest son leads the Conservative Party, and the youngest son leads the new party. Then, Storm, Night, Steam and the Mechanic Church are involved. They can directly fight each other. The result of the two sons' victory or loss can be used to low-key manipulate the desired reform. Although it has not reached that level yet, the third Prince Edisic has been in contact with the new party, criticizing some existing systems, and is dissatisfied with some of the Conservative Party's ideas. He has gradually turned away from the Church of Storms and started to contact the Church of Night and the Church of Steam and Machinery. However, with all parties adding fuel to the flames, the conflict could escalate. The rest depended on how the Black Emperor, Sequence 1 Prince of Order, the Judge, Sequence 1 Hand of Order, and some other guys in the dark planned to operate. According to tradition, the Lowen royal family could not voluntarily give up their own interests, but that was unreasonable. But King Lowen cannot take action himself, but the king's third son may be able to do so. If something happens to the eldest prince, it is natural for the third prince to take the throne. These are all personal actions of the princes and have nothing to do with the Lowen royal family. Even if they are forced to cede royal interests in the end during the struggle, it was caused by internal strife and the royal family had to make compensation. Shah Iyer still remembers that when he asked Edisic to kill the conservatives in name only, but in reality to kill the eldest prince, with the ultimate goal of killing the Lowen royal family, and especially his own father, Edisic, who had never been ambitious and was relatively humble and polite, had a mouth that could fit an egg. Edisic is good at everything, but he can easily learn bad things. However, his royal education has made him a bit rigid. He is not arrogant enough when facing the upper circles of Lowen. This is easy to solve. Triss knows how to attract hatred. The appearance of a scheming woman from a middle-class background next to the third prince can better explain his changes. Santuzzi is good in every way except that he is easily influenced by women. It's obvious that this woman is extremely ambitious and not a good person, but the third prince just likes her. Moreover, this woman's background is even closer to the new party, and she is not yet a follower of the Lord of Storms. It must be this woman who whispered in his ear, otherwise why would the third prince suddenly change his mind? Some of the reform plans that Edsac mentioned in the newspaper, such as improving the minimum wage system, improving the work system, rectifying heavily polluting enterprises, and requiring factory owners to purchase labor protection supplies for workers, have made his reputation very good among the middle and lower levels. Although it was just a slogan, it was the slogan shouted by the third prince of Lowen. In order to gain the support of the new party, Edsac continued to shout slogans, such as clearing invalid constituencies, ensuring that anyone who obtained the title by whatever means would have the opportunity to obtain a seat in the House of Lords, relaxing property restrictions for elections, etc., a series of political slogans targeting the Conservative Party and favoring the new party. As long as the slogans are shouted loudly, it is easy to gain the support of a group of factory owners, bankers, barristers, and some middle-class elites. Even without Edsac, they would also shout these slogans. Now that there is a prince to help shout, why not do it? Once the situation develops a bit more, the conservatives will ask Prince Rune to take their stand. What happens next will depend on how George III handles the situation. Anyway, as far as Shah Iyer knows, George III himself is very satisfied with this script. The previous one about Edisic colluding with the witch church. When the royal family was questioned by the three major churches, they took the initiative to make concessions in order to save their own situation. The script of making great concessions was directly torn up by George III. The king prefers this way of operation to being questioned by the three major churches, and both chess pieces are his sons, so it is so easy to play. The Grand Prince of Lowen would definitely support the Church of Storms. The third prince and Triss would each choose a faith. Then, through the Lowen Poor Law Reform Plan, a proposal would be made to allow the three major churches to openly send personnel to join the military. In addition, the distribution of interests at sea, in the southern continent colonies, and in the country would involve the three major churches. As long as these people fight and control the extent and direction of the political struggle, the reforms and new order needed to promote the Black Emperor can be gradually pieced together. By the time these people are liberated from the increasingly intensified internal struggles and external conflicts, the secret promotion ceremony will have been completed. This suggestion was made by Incel, and George III had already promised him a dukedom after the success. A true, extraordinary Duke of the Fourth Age. It seemed that if Shah Iyer helped George III stabilize the situation in the southern continent, allowing George III to wear the title of Emperor Balong and become the true Black Emperor and ascend to a true god, George III also planned to reward Shah Iyer with a sequence to Death Archon Beander characteristic. And it was not just empty talk. Shah Iyer could see that George III really meant it. He probably also wanted to test the relationship between Inz-El and the Church of Night. Shah El's performance was very good, which made George III a little suspicious. Was this a kind of secret support from the Goddess of Night? When the Storm Lord, whom the Lowen royal family had believed in for many years, merely acquiesced to this, and the Church of Storms was even becoming a subtle obstacle, the assistance given to the Lowen royal family by Inz-El, who came from the Church of the Night, gave Chao San the illusion that the Church of the Night was secretly supporting him. After all, the attitude of St. Samuel Cathedral was indeed implicitly supportive of the slogans shouted by Edisic. The fact that Shah Iyer was imprisoned for a few days for his outrageous remarks did cause a small-scale discussion in the church. At least the night watchmen of ordinary origin were more supportive. Moreover, the goddess of night and the god of war are enemies. The god of war has the sealed object 002, which is the uniqueness of the judge. After George III became a god, he wanted the uniqueness of the judge. The god of war is their common enemy. The Kingdom of Loan and the Faesac Empire were also in a competitive relationship, so the possibility of Chao San and the god of war joining forces to fight Dark Knight was not high. The end of the world is approaching, and having one more Dark Emperor is beneficial to the Earth as a whole. It is not impossible that the goddess of night chooses to give certain support while acquiescing. At least George III felt that he still had some images of a wise ruler, and that it was very likely that the gods were investing in him. He used the title of Emperor Baelong to elevate the Black Emperor, and later joined forces with the goddess of night to fight the god of war. The Kingdom of Loan tied up most of Faesac's energy, and the Black Emperor still had the energy to deepen his rule over the colonies of the southern continent through his real-world authority. This will also help the Church of Darkness to influence and control the Baelong royal family and the spiritual cult in the southern continent. The more George III thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He had no direct conflict of interest with the goddess of night, and the interests of both sides were consistent in many areas. Now that the end of the world is near, the faith of the goddess of night is deeply rooted in the Kingdom of Loan. Even if George III becomes a god, it will not shake the goddess of night. This is just asking for trouble. This former archbishop of the Church of Night who never forgets to pray to the goddess of night despite being busy every day, perhaps this is really some kind of arrangement by the goddess of night. The goddess of night actually supports him. Chapter 188 Special God. In the Fifth Age, there are those truly terrifying behind-the-scenes entities. For example, the Loan royal family planned the Black Emperor's deification ceremony, the witch church that persecuted people in the workplace out of boredom, and the witch church that played with Triss. There are also other scattered secret organizations and supernatural forces including the Aurora Society, which have basically been brought under control. Shah-Ir didn't know how the original Klein faced all this. Perhaps even if Mr. Fool ignored everything and just focused on himself, he could reach an enviable height by raising his sequence level. It's unlikely that the Evernight goddess would look upon Klein differently just because he did something kind or brave. Putting aside the uniqueness of Open Castle, he was just an ordinary person with basic moral values, and his righteous deeds were not worth much. In terms of character, sacrifice, and spirit, the Church of Night is so huge that there are always some clergy who are more noble. It seemed all Klein had to do was become Mr. Fool. Or, even if he didn't have to become the Fool, he could become an angel and ask the Evernight goddess, Shah-Ir, and other investors behind the scenes to do him a favor. There's nothing wrong with Shao Kai, but if you think about it carefully, there's not much need for him. Shah-Ir didn't need Klein as a pawn to participate in certain things on his behalf, not even as a spokesperson to help him fight for his own interests. The so-called divine favor was more because he didn't want this fellow countryman to die easily. Shah-Ir would help to suppress any major troubles. It seemed that Mr. Fool could just grow wildly according to his own wishes. In this era when the true God has not appeared, an archangel is enough to suppress an area. Shah-Ir thought about it briefly and realized that he was now at the age to apply for early retirement and retreat to the second line to become a behind-the-scenes villain. When I have nothing to do, I play with Hazel, dance with Audrey at the ball, and when the church has a mission, I follow daily to get some merits. There doesn't seem to be anything else to do. Huang Beibei is too lazy to contact, it's troublesome, no identity is appropriate. It seems that we have nothing in common with Miss Shu's words. Furs. This, tough, character seemed quite strange to approach, and the emotional value she could provide was far less than Hazel. When Hazel was in a good mood, she would even send Shah-Ir a handmade cake. This salty fish was indeed the most fun to interact with when checking the water meter. Ms. Sharon is too restrained. If she doesn't beat her until she cries, she will always feel like an idol. However, the relationship between the two resentful spirits has eased. It is okay to beat Ms. Sharon, but it can only be a beating. You can't beat her directly until she cries, otherwise there is no need to beat her. Is it really too early to return from the God-forsaken land? Life suddenly became regular. Should he use extraordinary items and ritual magic to design a special passage between the God-forsaken land and Backland, so that he could work normally in Backland during the day and go to Luvia's house to chat by candlelight at night? Shah-Ir felt that this idea was a bit difficult. The blockade of the God-forsaken land was not so easy to break, but it was not that difficult to do it if he really wanted to. It just required some special resources to build a channel. Now that I have plenty of time, I can just play around. The easiest way is to stitch up the shattered spirit world of the God-forsaken land, even if it's just a part of the Silver City. Unfortunately, I don't have the right tools. Shah-Ir was suddenly stunned when he thought of this. He didn't even read the Storm Mansion on the table that he used to pass the time. He almost thought he was on the lawful side. Didn't the Abraham family still have 2 level 0 sealed artifacts? The Abraham family themselves didn't have much use for the painting of God, so what if he borrowed it for a bit? It was a ready-made, anywhere door. Shah-Ir rented it for a period of time, and in return, helped a member of the elders of the Abraham family to block the full moon curse. This would not be bad for both parties. Fourth Age. The dignified King of Angels worked hard and finally gathered the 2+1 of the Hermit Path. Shah-Ir also found a clue about the last characteristic of the Emperor of Knowledge, which was in the form of a sealed object in the hands of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. This Knowledge Emperor trait is really hard to obtain without taking action. The Wisdom Dragon took the same path as Shah-Ir. He directly ate this trait and stored it in his body, which is a simulation of grazing. Shah-Ir didn't want to fight the old dragon for the time being. He found a Sequence 1 characteristic enlightener of the Perfectionist Path, also known as the Civilization Enlightener, or the Light of Darkness, which barely made up the basic line of adjacent 3+1. It is also very difficult for him to perfectly complete the 3+1 of the Perfectionist Path. It is hard to say whether it is unique. The Sequence 1 characteristics are definitely mastered by at least one existing supernatural force. These top-level extraordinary resources are not completely monopolized thanks to the uniqueness and secrecy of the high sequence characteristics themselves. Otherwise, there would be no place for latecomers. If the 6 mutually hostile gods, such as Feng Zibai and He Xizan, each possess a Sequence 1 characteristic of a certain path, or if some of them possess a Sequence 1 characteristic of other paths, then the angels born later should simply give up on becoming gods. The probability of getting 3+1 to become gods is too slim. 3+1 equals God. Is it the same even for 3+1 programs with different pathways? Shah-Ir held the Enlightener's characteristics in his hand, and he could feel his own desire and restlessness. In his body now, a copy of the Fantasy White Tower Sequence 1 maintains his status, and he has released a copy of the Hermit's Uniqueness, 2 copies of the Hermit's Path Sequence 1, and now he has obtained a copy of the Perfector's Path Sequence 1. If he really lets go, Shah-Ir will directly gather into an ancient god if he does not die. Grazing shouldn't be considered as digesting these characteristics and uniqueness. I'm strong enough. Even an angel king like Aemon can't steal my core skill of grazing. Even if he does, it's useless. This grazing is simulated through the authority of the White Tower. It's not a traditional Beander ability. Even if he steals it, the Hermit's authority can still achieve the effect of grazing. After a simple insight and prediction, Shah-Ir still divided a virtual personality into this Sequence 1 characteristic, and then chose to graze. After the extraordinary characteristics entered the body, Shah-Ir could feel the tendency of aggregation and could only patch it up. Grazing plus virtual personality plus parasitism plus sealing plus mutual balance and leveraging force. After this series of combined punches, Shah-Ir suppressed the restless Beander characteristics in his body. But this is only a temporary solution and not a fundamental solution. Shah-Ir's current state can indeed suppress the characteristics of his body. Perhaps it is a little easier than Mr. Men's 3+1, but Shah-Ir does not like this state where the enemy can exploit the bug. Chapter 189 I, with my left foot on my right foot, became a god. The world's bugs can be exploited artificially. But you cannot let others exploit your own bugs. As a believer in Tianzun, Sha'ir could not tolerate his body being out of control. Madness was an acceptable price to pay, but the foundation had to be compacted and the roots had to be solid, otherwise he would never be able to show up to the stage. The foundation of the Angel King of Kings, combined with the 3+1 enhancements from the herding knowledge side, is enough to make me a true god. But the King of Angels among the Kings of Angels is still an angel. He is still somewhat inferior to these true gods. Sha'ir once again returned to the Dragon Kingdom, the city of miracles, where he planned to truly combine his characteristics to become a god. Only if he becomes a god can many things be justified. If he doesn't become a god, it will always be lacking. The Hermit Path's apotheosis ritual, Sha'ir's own version of it, was to conceal a core piece of information related to uniqueness, or the true God, or the kingdom of God. This refers to the apotheosis ritual of the Night Path. The core of the ritual is to hide an important piece of mystical knowledge from others, so that only oneself can draw symbols and power from this knowledge. The Dragon Kingdom has been usurped. This can be considered part of the deification ritual, but it's not enough. It can only be considered as satisfying the most basic bottom line. Sha'ir directly released the grazing in his body and allowed the extraordinary characteristics to gather in his body. Of course, he did not fall into madness immediately. After all, this deification ceremony was just a little bit watery and could not be said to be completely ineffective. The next part is that Sha'ir combines the Hermit 2+1 with the Fantasy White Tower 1. This is almost impossible. The characteristics of fantasy can only be used to maintain the status and cannot be used to gather into a god. This is the result obtained through experiments and speculation. But nothing is absolute. Sha'ir has 2+1 hermits and 1 perfecter in his body. These are adjacent pathways, which can definitely make the extraordinary characteristics produce a clustering effect. It is only necessary to firmly control the sequence 1 characteristics of the perfectionist path, so that this extraordinary characteristic, which is still in the process of being grazed, can be observed from afar and also desecrated. However, the progress of the fusion must be mastered. Hermit 2+1 is released first and the aggregation process begins. The Fantasy White Tower 1 uses the pollution of the Chaos Sea as a glue to glue the fantasy characteristics with Hermit 2+1 together, and continue the process of aggregation into God. The last one is the Perfect Grazing Sequence 1. This characteristic must be slowly released and added to the aggregation process in the body, completely serving as a catalyst to complete the last piece of the puzzle of becoming a god. Because these Hermit 2+1 and Perfect 1 were collected one after another, and were only grazed without actually being absorbed and digested, Sha'ir's deification process would be slower than the normal deification process, not to mention the time he spent holding back. It is very dangerous to mess around like this, but the confidence and false high status of the Traverser make Sha'ir feel that he is unlikely to die suddenly. After all, he can still use the audience channels, fantasy come true, mental treatment, and other related abilities, but his condition is definitely not good. So the most crucial move is to remove the firewood from under the cauldron. In advance, the real perfectionist path sequence 1 was exchanged for the historical projection through the gray fog space, and then the real characteristics and the historical projection characteristics were grafted together using the Tianzun curtain, so that the historical projection characteristics would have the authenticity that was not inferior to the real characteristics for a short period of time. Hermit 2+1, Fantasy White Tower 1, Historical Projection Perfecter 1. These uniqueness and characteristics began to converge through the apotheosis rituals and the promotion of certain forces. Although the fantasy characteristics are between reality and illusion, the power is real, and the breath of the Chaos Sea is also real. The historical projection characteristics and the real characteristics are grafted together, and during the period when the real characteristics do not appear, they are the real characteristics. After these aggregations are completed, Sha'ir will become the ancient god of the mixed path. He used the historical projection of the perfect 1-1 to bypass the restriction that the fantasy characteristic could not be the basis for becoming a god. The fantasy characteristic only has limitations on becoming a god. Now that you have become a god, there is no problem using the fantasy characteristic to maintain your status. The historical projection characteristics are only temporary truths and will be corrected by reality. When the time comes, the historical projection will disappear and fall from the altar. But the fantasy characteristic can fill the position and maintain the status, so what if the reality is corrected? To reduce stress and craziness. Before reality corrected him, Shah could sever his historical projection and lose the blessing of the gray fog space. Like rootless water, the perfectionist path sequence 1 would quickly disappear on its own. However, this part of his power would not return to the historical fog of the real world. It would be hidden, just like the secrets of the entire Dragon Kingdom were covered up. After Shah fake characteristics disappeared, he was still able to maintain the foundation of 3+1, because he became a god by using the bug of the mysterious side. Before being exposed, the mysterious side could enjoy the godhood experience card, and he stabilized his ancient god status by using the bug of the god side, which is a long-standing ability of the Chaos C series. The visionary can share a sequence 1 characteristic with others, and then imagine a Beander characteristic for themselves to maintain their own strength and status. Shah only separated a part of his characteristics. When that characteristic left his body, it did not prevent him from continuing to use the characteristic he had imagined. As for the fact that the disappeared characteristic was different from the imagined characteristic, and the time when the imagined characteristic and the disappeared characteristic did not match, it didn't matter, the result was the same. These mystical knowledge related to the fundamental purpose of an ancient god's deification will be hidden by the ancient god directly using the authority of the hermit, and then become part of the hermit's deification ceremony. The sequence 1 of the perfectionist path can also be regrazed after becoming a god. The hermit who has become a god has enough ability to graze adjacent characteristics. Instead of being unable to restrain yourself and choosing to eat this characteristic, adding unnecessary pressure and burden to your own mental state. Anyway, the conditions for becoming a god in the body are met. No matter how you count, 3+1 is enough, and it has been aggregated, so the account is correct. As for how to become a god, what is the ceremony of becoming a god, and what is the foundation of becoming a god? That's secret. Anyway, to the outside world, it's 2+1 hermits and 1 perfectionist. Internally, it's 2+1 hermit, 1 fantasy white tower. But the reality is, hermit 2+1, fantasy white tower 1, and shepherd perfector 1. After Shah took perfectionist 1 out of the gray fog space and put it back to pasture, he began to complete his own apotheosis ritual, because the secrets involved were complicated enough, including the kingdom of dragon god, the hermit path, the white tower path, the perfectionist path, and also a little bit of the power of the chaos sea and source castle. The symbols and powers he could draw from this mystical knowledge were also somewhat mixed. Shah current foundation for becoming a god is hermit 2+1 and fantasy white tower 1. It's not that crazy. After all, the hermit path and the white tower path are complementary. Although they are not adjacent paths, they are definitely close paths. And most importantly, white tower sequence 1 is imaginary, half illusory and half real, and can be adjusted. Who stipulates that white pagoda can only be white pagoda? Chapter 190 The True Hermit. It's been a wonderful experience. Shah feels very wonderful now. Originally, he was just an archangel from all 5 clans who was contaminated by the Sea of Chaos. He relied on his relationship with Saphira Castle to gain some independence from the constraints of both sides. Originally, if we break it down, the consciousness of the original god should have been revived in his body, but now the core has jumped from the 5 families to the 2 families of knowledge. There have been some changes in the authority and divinity, and the consciousness of the demon of knowledge has revived in the body. But in the Chaos era, the demon of knowledge was crushed once again by the primordial god, which made the demon of knowledge's consciousness very ignorant. It had spirit but no soul, and it did not merge with the consciousness of the primordial god. Logically speaking, how could the divine being have so much consciousness? In such a complex situation, shouldn't the most important thing to point to be the beginning? But unfortunately, Shah-Ir was polluted by the aura of the Chaos Sea. He was also connected to the Source Castle. There were too many middlemen. His mainstream divinity was definitely not the original creator. After many twists and turns, it could be directly attributed to the original god. But Shah-Ir is not a real god, he is an ancient god, he is not a hermit, he is a hidden sage who has infiltrated the White Tower. Mixed approaches are beneficial to balancing the mainstream consciousness of recovery in the body. This is how the ancient gods became gods in the early Second Era when the imprint of the old spirits was still very strong. Shah-Ir, the demon of knowledge, the original god. What a perfect triangle this is. Although the consciousness of the demon of knowledge is ignorant, he is the core component. Although the components of the original god are rare, they have been contaminated by the Chaos Sea after all. This model is beneficial to Shah-Ir. At least it is easier for the three strange families to fight against the Lord of Secrets on their own than for all five families to fight against the original god on their own. The only problem is the madness of the ancient gods. Even though Shah-Ir has been very careful in the operation and has not taken the Perfectionist Sequence 1, the White Tower Sequence 1 is still a fantasy, but as long as he still maintains the status of a god, he must be an ancient god. There is no ancient god who is not crazy, it's just that some ancient gods are in better condition in the early stages. For example, Lilith, the ancestor of vampires. After all, Shah-Ir is a sage of knowledge, so there must be ways to further reduce his burden. I now bear the identity and fate of the negative personality of the fantasy dragon. Although this is only an honorary title for the current, hidden sage, he does bear the bad side of this fate, that is, being polluted by the Chaos Sea. Correspondingly, he bears the risks of fate, and of course he can also get the gifts that belong to fate. Mystery reappears. Recreate the mystery of the utopian dragon and the mystery of the dreamer's power. The hidden sage directly imagined the missing characteristic of the Emperor of Knowledge. Having already tasted two of the Knowledge Emperor's characteristics, it's not a stretch of the imagination to imagine the last characteristic. If the visionary can do this, then can't the hidden sage, whose fate is related to the visionary dragon, be able to reproduce this mystery? In this way, Shah-Ir imagined the last missing characteristic, incorporated it into his own deification system, and then cancelled the imagined White Tower Sequence 1 characteristic and replaced it in his body. It's still Hermit 2+1, plus a Fantasy 1, but it's replaced with a more suitable Fantasy 1. In this way, Shah-Ir changed from a hidden sage to a hermit. He was promoted from an ancient god to a true god, and the mental pressure he needed to bear was reduced again. After revoking the White Tower 1, his connection with the Chaos Sea also changed. Although this little trick could not get rid of the pollution of the Chaos Sea, it only made his own state healthier. However, the hermit himself did not think about decoupling from the Chaos Sea. He just wanted to reduce his dependence. Now that the knowledge wilderness is far away in the Western continent, it can control the pollution of the Chaos Sea to itself within a certain range. When needed, it can use the power of the Chaos Sea in a limited way, and can also use the god system to balance the revived divinity in the body. This is a sure win. It is unclear whether the original god has eaten the wilderness of knowledge, but the original god has definitely grazed the wilderness of knowledge. Isn't the current state of the hermit just very pitiful, being grazed by the Sea of Chaos? The Chaos Sea has grazed the hermit, and of course it can affect the hermit, but the Chaos Sea is temporarily dormant, and the hermit is entangled in the spiritual thread of the gray fog, and the demon of knowledge is also reviving, so the hermit is temporarily obeying orders and not hearing declarations. If the original god comes back to life and gives orders personally, the hermit will definitely be God's pious lamb. Whatever the original God said is what it is, but didn't God say anything? Since the hermit is still God's lamb in name, it is not excessive for him to eat some grass on the grassland of the Chaos Sea. After all, the Chaos Sea has polluted the hermit, so it is normal for the hermit to borrow the power of pollution. The foundation of the hermit's existence is the pollution of the Chaos Sea. If there is someone who can help me cleanse the pollution of the Chaos Sea, I can be knocked off the altar of true God, and fall back to the level of the angel king. Shah-Ir has reached this point now, and his own condition has been almost sorted out. As for those historical issues, such as the spiritual consciousness of the negative personality of the utopian dragon that he suppressed, the hermit just wiped it lightly, and those spiritual remnants turned into pure information flows. After these information flows were absorbed, everything about the negative personality of the fantasy dragon became a part of the hermit and no longer posed any threat. Even if the fantasy dragon was resurrected, he would not be able to use these to attack the hermit. Next are the resurrection backup and spiritual remnants reserved by the fantasy dragon in the city hall. Although a series of land reforms had been carried out during the Angel King's reign, it was still a little short of what was needed. The hermit now directly activated the Eye of Prying Secrets, and began to completely seize the highest authority of the Dragon Kingdom, taking everything that was beneficial to him for his own benefit. No matter how sophisticated the backup plan left by the imagination dragon was, the hermit could directly format and reprogram it. What he needs to do now is to thoroughly sort out everything he knows, including the development and reuse of the gray fog space. The hermit can bestow power upon knowledge, and of course can also absorb the necessary knowledge from the power of the gray mist space. Northern Continent. The Scourge Elf felt more relaxed after knowing that he had become a god. He is now watching the changes happening in the Northern Continent more like a spectator. When Solomon became the king of angels, he directly turned against the true creator and launched a fierce attack on the diocese of Eternal Sun. The true creator still had some foundation, and the various supernatural forces all hoped to break the continental monopoly of the six gods, so, the Solomon family successfully put together the 3+1 of the Black Emperor's path. The true creator or the fallen god resists the eternal scorching sun. Then the war began. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 191. The World Divided into Two. The fallen god is a giant true god connected to the Chaos Sea. He is fully capable of suppressing the eternal sun and even has the energy to restrain another true god. Night and the god of war are restraining each other and are not involved in this matter for the time being. Solomon, Medici, Ouroboros, these are the three kings of angels. The parish of the Church of the Eternal Sun simply couldn't hold on. Shah-Ir, who was watching the show in the kingdom of Constantine, received a letter from the Solomon family. The Solomon family and the forces of the fallen god are willing to support the kingdom of Constant in attacking the diocese of the Lord of Storms. The stakes in the letter are also very simple. King Constant is an elven angel. Don't the elves want to take back control of the elf island, Sonia Island? Moreover, the elves and the Church of Storms are naturally hostile to each other, and there is a natural conflict between the two sides in the path of the storm. Hey, why don't you say divide the world into two? Shah-Ir laughed when he received the letter, but he still decided to take action because if he did not intervene, it would be unlikely that the true creator and the Solomon family would form an alliance to unify the northern continent. No matter how big the conflicts among the six gods are, they are still six gods. You, Solomon, are just an angel king. You can expand your territory while consolidating your rule over the occupied areas and building a new order that the gods need. By the way, I have to guard against the counterattack of the six gods' church and continue to divide them. Do I have to spare the energy and free time to become a god? Isn't this treating Liutian as a fool? If you don't defect, you won't be able to hold the ceremony of becoming a god under the eternal sun. Even if you defect, you still have to suppress the six gods' church to expand its territory, Build an empire at the same time. Let the people of the empire associate you with the title of emperor, and then build a new order required by God. Shah-Ir couldn't understand how the Black Emperor Solomon became a god when he didn't exist in the original time and space. This was unscientific, and it was a bit of luck. Solomon could not become king without seeking refuge in the gods, because the 6 gods plus the real creator were all in the northern continent. It was too crowded here. Without seeking refuge in the gods and relying on the church, it was impossible to form a decent kingdom. There were dioceses of the 7 gods everywhere. To surrender to the gods and become a king means that one cannot become an emperor. No church can tolerate the king it has trained wanting to override the church. No god can accept the presence of a black emperor in his diocese who is equal to him or even has stronger control. The 6 gods would never allow such a thing to happen in their territory. The real creator might be able to accept it, but the highest position he could hold was only the king. It was absolutely impossible to become the emperor in the real creator's territory, as he would be targeted by Feng Zibai and the other 3 families. How could the former white creation confidants like the Lord of Storms and the eternal blazing sun be completely unaware of the Black Emperor's apotheosis? How could the Dragon of Wisdom, possessing omniscience, be completely unaware of it? The Black Emperor's rituals could not be concealed from anyone, and a completely new order had to be established. The style advocated by Solomon seemed to emphasize distortion and disharmony, which made it even more noticeable. Having one's own country and having one's own name associated with the title of emperor become common knowledge among the people, which is also eye-catching enough. Other people in the 4th Age operated in the form of parishes and states. The church was in charge of different places, and the relatives of the church's high-ranking officials were the nobles of each place. Because of the conflicts between the churches, this non-unified approach was more convenient. Today you destroyed one of my parishes, and tomorrow I will destroy one of yours. If the 6 gods all unified one territory, wouldn't this affect the church's missionary work and the acquisition of territory in other places? All places in the northern continent are loose alliance structures with churches is the bond, which makes it convenient for each church to cooperate or conflict with each other according to region. When the Eternal Sun Diocese and the Church of the Lord of Storms in the north cooperate with each other, it does not prevent the 2 dioceses of the south from beating each other's brains out. Because each territory is small, the 6 gods church can basically operate in the entire northern continent. The 6 gods nowadays do not need the concept of a nation. Instead, the nation is a constraint on the church. If they can travel around to preach, why should they be confined to one place? Only the Solomon family has always been thinking about unification and expansion. Such a contrast, so different, and they still want to keep the 6 gods in the dark about the true purpose of the Solomon family. In this case, in this game of theocracy, does the imperial power want to rise and suppress the religious power in a short period of time? This is somewhat disrespectful to the IQ of the other 6 gods. At least Shah-Ir believed that he could not reach such a high position from the perspective of the Solomon family. This may be because he does not understand politics, does not know how to blacken the emperor, does not know how to distort checks and balances, how to corrupt and bribe, and how to plot and scheme. But in this era when many gods coexisted and gods walked the earth, the Solomon family gritted their teeth and worked hard on this difficult path for many years to become the first god of the new generation. Moreover, relying on the alliance with the fallen god, the rifts between the 6 gods, and the support of the extraordinary nobles, he was able to unify the northern continent. He could make the 6 gods recognize his rule and relegate the 6 gods, kingdom on earth, to a more barren area. Shah-Ir believed that his political wisdom was not capable of reaching this level. Even if he tried to influence people subtly and gradually exclude the church of the 6 gods, he could not achieve this level. The first Solomon Empire could actually last for about 300 years. What a sophisticated means of checks and balances. The fallen god is estimated to be able to fight 1 against 2. After Solomon gained power, he might also be able to fight 1 against 2 due to the vast area of his empire and the special nature of the realistic gods. Theoretically, he can achieve this level. But Shah-Ir didn't know how to start his career. Becoming a god was difficult. After becoming a god, the two gods would form an alliance and continue to maintain the rift between the six gods. It is even more difficult to prevent the six gods from forming an alliance. Theoretically, as long as there aren't three or more gods forming an alliance at the same time, there's a chance, and the possibility of operation is also very high, but Shah-Ir still feels it's very unreliable. If he were the Black Emperor, he would recognize the orthodox status of the fallen god, making him the first order god in the northern continent, and at the same time elevate the Church of the Mother Earth to the position of state religion, and then allow the Church of the God of War and the Church of the Goddess of Night to freely spread their faith in the northern continent. However, we must respect the belief in the fallen god and the status of the Earth Church as a state religion. As for Feng, Ji, and Bai, directly blacklist and prohibit missionary work. If you don't accept it, have a fight. It would be best if you can drive Feng, Ji, and Bai out of the northern continent and send them to the southern continent and the Death Scroll. Wouldn't it be fairer to have 4 gods from the northern continent and 4 gods from the southern continent? If I can figure it out, there's no reason why the politically savvy Solomon family can't figure it out. Isn't this just to win over the Earth Church? As for why the original time and space couldn't be won over, who knows? After Shah-Ir made a preliminary plan to divide the world into 2, he dragged the Pope of Earth out of the church and took the Pope with him to find the Mother Earth. Shah-Ir stated his position very clearly. If the Mother Goddess of Earth was unwilling to intervene too much, then he would just declare war on the Storm Parish in the name of the Kingdom of Constant and the Elves. Considering the existence of the Lord of Storms, it didn't matter if he didn't start a war, as long as he could contain the Storm Parish. You think I'm afraid of Leodro? When Mother Earth heard this, her gentle expression faded. Chapter 192 Who to Rely On. The Earth Mother Goddess never thought that one day, her favored ones would actually worry about causing trouble for her. Isn't this looking down on the original vampire? When he looked down upon the world, Leodoro had not yet been born. My dear Shah-Ir, do whatever you want. If you want to declare war on the Church of the Storm, then go ahead. You are my favored one, so don't worry about the Storm's favored one. Lilith said it bluntly, if you want to fight, then fight. Your background is no worse than the Storm Church. We can afford to offend you. I think you may have misunderstood something. Okay, now that you say so. Shah-Ir wanted to say that this was not a question of fear or not. The elves and the Church of the Earth only had a cooperative relationship. If his personal behavior caused the Lord of Storms and the Mother Earth to start a war of gods, then this would be somewhat of an insult to the Mother Earth, and would be considered dragging her into the water. However, the Earth Mother's silent smile made Shah-Ir give up the idea of continuing. He definitely understood what Shah-Ir meant, but he didn't seem to care about the possible trouble. It was better to say that Lilith didn't care about such trivial matters at all. Let his followers do whatever they want. She was also a little bored. All right. Shah-Ir stopped talking nonsense, glanced at the Earth Pope who didn't interrupt, and said, you can stay a little longer. Shah-Ir turned around and left. He originally felt that he was not familiar with Lilith. If the kingdom of Constantine provoked the Storm Church, it should at least say hello to Lilith. But since the Mother Earth felt that they were more familiar, then so be it. Pope Roland of the Earth looked at Shah-Ir's back and really wanted to go up and give him a stab. What was the purpose of calling him over? Did you just say hello and leave? Roland. The voice of Mother Earth made the Mistress of the Desolation turn her head quickly. Mother Goddess. Pope Roland bowed slightly to show his respect. The curve of her chest was so beautiful, but it had no killing power at all on the larger Mother Earth. What do you think of this elf? Lilith looked at her Pope with interest. Roland didn't hide his intention to establish a hereditary system within the Church of Earth. Lilith found it funny that his favored ones and those blessed by God were also unique. Mother Goddess, I don't think he has truly integrated into our church, nor does he seem to intend to truly integrate. Pope Roland was very serious when answering questions. This was also what made her very angry. If Shah-Ir really considered himself a member of the Church of the Earth, what he said just now should not be like that. Shah-Ir still did not consider the issue from the standpoint of the Church of the Earth, and still only regarded the Church of the Earth as an ally. How could Pope Roland not be angry? The plan was so perfect. He was the first person in the system of God's grace, and Shah-Ir was the first person in the system of God's favor. Their children would be able to take over in the future. But this elf didn't even think about developing in depth in the Church of the Earth. What made Pope Roland most angry was that before Shah-Ir brought her to see the Mother Goddess of Earth, he did not explain the matter clearly to her in advance and did not discuss it with her. This stupid elf did not even think about it. Could he, as the Pope, understand the Mother Goddess better than her? It seems your charm is still not as good as Kazanamu's. Lilith didn't care about Shah-Ir's attitude, but instead teased her Pope. Pope Roland felt that this was Shah-Ir's problem, but she was not in a position to say it. After all, the Mother Earth and the Queen of Elf were great beings of the same era, and she was only a junior in front of them. Didn't you give birth to a daughter? I think you'll be very busy later on. Bring her over here and I'll help you take care of her for 2 days. Mother Earth made her own request. As the mother of the sequence, he also needs this kind of small toy to pass the time. Thank you for your gift. Pope Roland was ecstatic when he heard this. Although he knew that the Mother Earth meant it was fun, so what? She had inherited a druid trait from her offspring, so even though they were still young, they could still transform into Earth bears. It was definitely a fun game, and with the Earth Mother, what injuries couldn't be healed? Even injuries that affected the soul weren't a big deal. It is such a rare opportunity and grace that her offspring have the chance to serve the Mother Goddess. When the Mother Earth saw the joy on her Pope's face, the corners of her mouth curved slightly. Laugh, laugh, but when your offspring grow up and compete with you for favor and love, you won't be able to laugh anymore. In the Church of the Earth, the only ones who can compete with the Earth Pope for the favor of Mother Earth are, of course, the carefully cultivated descendants of the Earth Pope. The other side. Shah-Ir returned to his palace. Rhodes had already taken off his butler uniform and put on full body armor, with 2 heavy swords slung across his back. Your Majesty, let me lead the team to besiege the parish of the Storm Church. Rhodes said eagerly. You'd better save it. The red-haired Soren pushed Rhodes away, then looked at Shur expectantly and said, when are we going to fight? I'm getting rusty without a fight. Our main task is to contain the power of the Storm Church. Don't always think about war. We should use wisdom to solve problems. Rhodes said this and took the greatsword behind him. Haha, it's not easy to contain the Storm Church. They can't stand any stimulation anyway. Soren was quite happy to argue with Rhodes. Since everything is clear, then go ahead. If we still have enough manpower, we should not let go of even the diocese of the God of Wisdom. Shah-Ir gave the order directly. The Kingdom of Constant still has a lot of low and middle level combat power. The elves alone can withstand the Church of Storms, not to mention the Church of Earth. I will attack the north. Rhodes excitedly turned around to integrate his heavy knight army. Soren was not in a hurry. He looked at Shah-Ir, who seemed to have no intention of taking action himself, and said, Are you really going to form an alliance with Solomon? He is the king of angels after all. If he were in control of the situation, he would most likely suppress us without hesitation. Soren still felt that he had to be on guard. Solomon is in control of the situation. You still want to take control of the situation without our support? Shah-Ir shook his head and laughed. The kingdom of Constantine was located on the west side of the northern continent. Whoever wanted to take control of the situation would need the support of the kingdom of Constantine. Just keep it in mind. Soren left after he finished speaking. He was quite casual in front of Shah-Ir. After all, in Soren's opinion, Shah-Ir would probably be at the level of Sequence 2 in this life. He had great hopes of surpassing Shah-Ir, as Shah-Ir would still have to rely on him by then. Chapter 193, The 3 Religions Converge. The parish of the Lord of Storms suddenly came under a fierce attack. Even though Shur's order was just to contain the enemy, both Soren and Erodes clearly had their own ideas. After the two of them discussed it, they decided that the Church of Storms would definitely lose patience, so there was no point in containing them, so they should just fight directly. As a result, when the forces of the fallen god and the eternal sun were fighting, the storm parish was attacked by the kingdom of Constant. Several small parishes fell directly. Even if the war did not involve angels, the gap in quality and quantity between low and middle-level extraordinary people and combatants would be difficult to make up. When the extraordinary battlefield failed to gain an advantage, the kingdom of Constantine launched an almost crushing attack on these scattered parishes. In the kingdom of Constantia, there is the all-knowing Erodes, the red-haired Soren who can command the legion in battle, the elves who are extremely familiar with the path of the storm, and the extraordinary people of the Earth Church who can resist, fight, heal, and poison. When the Pope of the Storm Church arrived, all the dioceses in the Storm Diocese near the west side of the continent had fallen. The Pope angrily summoned a lightning storm to wipe out the enemy. Shah-Ir walked out from the other side of the clouds and dragged the Pope to another place. The sky was covered by storms and lightning. The Pope struggled several times but could not break free from Shah-Ir's grip. He could only watch the battle situation become more deteriorating. After the Storm Church's western forces were defeated, the Constant Kingdom's army continued to advance eastward. The Storm Lord Leodro wanted to intervene, but was blocked by a wall of plants that grew out of thin air. The shadow of the Earth Mother Goddess enveloped the expanding army of the Constant Kingdom, and pointed the wooden staff in her hand in the direction of Backland. The core parish of the Church of the Storm seemed to be saying that if the Lord of Storms broke the rules, then they wouldn't mind letting the entire Backland fall into the center of the earth. The Lord of Storms was extremely angry, which could be seen from the sudden change in the climate. However, considering the eternal sun that was being beaten next door, the Lord of Storms decided not to bother with the Mother Earth for the time being. The Lord of Storms chose to stop, but the army of the Kingdom of Constant was still frightened by the divine might, especially the elves in the path of the storm. Even with the protection of the Mother Earth, they still felt the fear and trembling that came from their souls. This not only frightened the elves, but also made them hate the Lord of Storms who occupied the throne of storms even more. After a short rest, the army of the Kingdom of Constantine moved directly into the parish of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. Such a group of violent forces such as Storm, Earth, Hunter, and Warrior broke into the world of scholars. Soren's performance in this was particularly outstanding. Relying on the collective blessing of the army, he chased and hacked the two white-haired old men of Sequence 3 from the Church of Knowledge alone. The wolf fox was incredible. These scholars were certainly not vegetarians, but they were still forced to run around in front of such a war bishop supported by a huge legion. The parish of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom fell even faster, and even no angels came to support it. A large number of readers remembered the horror of the hunters. They simply abandoned the diocese near the west side of the northern continent and quickly ran away with all kinds of classics. There is no support from the archdiocese. The eternal blazing sun was whipped by the fallen god like a father beating his son, but this stubborn boy did not bow his head to admit defeat, nor did he ask for help. The arrogant son really would not ask for help unless it was absolutely necessary. After all, he was facing the Lord he once admired the most. He was so reserved before the Lord. Although the Lord of Storms seemed a little anxious, the arrogant tyrant would not do something like taking the initiative to help. After all, he was the former Lord. Eternal Sun was beaten so badly and did not take the initiative to call for help. Why did he just go up to him? Is he such a coward? The two of them were stuck in a stalemate, constantly despising and cursing each other in their hearts. In the end, it was the God of Knowledge and Wisdom who couldn't stand it anymore. Wulong was really worried that if Eternal Liang continued to be so arrogant, he would be beaten to death by the fallen god. Since he had no idle baggage, he rushed forward to help Eternal Liang share some of the pressure. Hang! The Lord of Storms snorted coldly when he saw this scene. The God of Knowledge and Wisdom has taken action, so there is no reason for the Church of Knowledge not to help. Thus, the extraordinary people of the Church of the Eternal Sun and the Church of Knowledge began to merge. Although they were still not as good as the three angel kings, Solomon, Medici, and the Angel of Destiny, these three angel kings did not want to let the eternal sun and the dragon of wisdom fight to the death. Although the battle lines between the two churches were constantly retreating, it never developed to the point of a massacre. Shah-Ir was not polite either. He joined forces with the Pope of Earth and the God of Luck and started to fight from west to east. The front line of the stormed church was also constantly collapsing. Shah-Ir fought from west to east, and Solomon fought from east to west. The two forces tacitly encroached on the dioceses of the three gods of wind, wisdom, and white. Shah-Ir did not touch the civilian believers in the occupied areas who originally believed in the three gods. He did not even use extraordinary means to ask these people to convert. He just silently advanced the front line. If he encountered parishes belonging to the Church of the Goddess of Night and the Church of the God of War along the way, he would simply bypass them. It did not annex them, but it also surrounded these scattered parishes. The bet is that the Church of the God of War will not rashly attack the Church of the Mother Earth from behind. The bet is that the Church of Evernight would rather watch from the sidelines than get involved. This war lasted for many years. Shah-Ir even withdrew from the front line and directed and watched from behind. Initially, the advantage of the kingdom of Constantine was of course unstoppable. But when the Eternal Sun, the Lord of Storms, and the Church of Knowledge joined forces under pressure, the advancement of the front became extremely slow. The resistance after the confluence of the Sun Path, Storm Path, and White Tower Path was extremely tenacious, and the angels and above withdrew due to a certain balance. What is being competed for now is the foundation and power of the middle and lower classes. Shah-Ir saw a country that loved farming and advocated reproduction. His logistics were not a problem at all, and it was very easy to raise troops. People in this era were relatively simple. As long as they were fighting for the mother goddess of the earth, they would almost bring their own dry food to the battlefield to fill the line. Not to mention that Shah-Ir also distributed land, and it was all land in the occupied areas anyway. Sorin hasn't left the front lines for a long time. Shah-Ir sometimes wonders if this guy can be promoted to an angel at any time, but is reluctant to retire from the battlefield, so he is reluctant to be promoted. He has no evidence for this. Your sister still doesn't want to take a break. Shah-Ir looked at a lady beside him who looked somewhat similar to Sorin. That's just my brother's personality. Sorin's sister put down the book and looked helpless. Chapter 194, Pass It On, the Third Son of God. While Shah-Ir was discussing mystical knowledge with Sorin's sister, Sorin's loud laughter had already made the storm pigeons feel physically uncomfortable. This red-haired guy was very good at fighting, but he was also very talkative. His long fiery red hair swayed back and forth, which really affected people's perception. This war in the Age of Strife lasted for many years. Judging from the overall time span alone, Feng Zibai was given enough face, so it was acceptable for him to be defeated after such a long time. Shah-Ir knew very well why Solomon and other angel kings retreated to the second line. Only after Solomon retreated from the front line did he have time to reorganize the kingdom of Solomon in the rear and pave the way for the final deification ceremony. If it weren't for Shah-Ir, Solomon would not have had the spare time and would probably have to work harder with a group of angels who had defected to him, such as Antigonus. Now, due to the intervention of the kingdom of Constantine, all combat forces above the angel level are directly passed. The angels were also happy not to really help Solomon, but only sent their own forces to join the war. Due to system problems, most of these extraordinary people chose to join the two kingdoms. Shah-Ir also accepted the allegiance of some extraordinary families. For example, the Einhorn family. I don't understand. Isn't the witch path a good one? Shah-Ir looked at Einhorn in confusion. In his opinion, the witch path was much better than the hunter path. As a result, these women gave up being women and insisted on being men. Don't they know that this track is also very competitive? Einhorn didn't really want to answer this question. Of course, he wanted to continue being a woman, but where did the Beander characteristics of a Sequence 2 witch path come from? How was the general ascension ceremony for a Sequence 2 witch path performed? What was the formula for the potion of a high-sequence witch path? Before sequence 2, how could there be so many opportunities for free choice? You should have gotten the answer to this question from Soren. Einhorn turned the topic to Soren. The hunter's ascension angel's ritual is indeed simpler. Shah-Ir knew that the ritual for the hunter to be promoted to an angel was related to the weather, which he did not think was difficult. Chick's luck should be better than Soren and Einhorn's. If Shah-Ir remembered correctly, Chick had picked up Lilith's hair before the 4th era, which could be used as a sequence 2 Beander characteristic of the witch path. Whenever Shah-Ir saw the Earth Mother, he would wonder how beautiful the vampire ancestor Lilith would be when she was at her best. The moon path, the mother path, and even the witch path mixed in. No wonder even the giant king, Olmir, couldn't help but be moved. Lilith at that time was probably a beauty that transcended species. Pledge your loyalty to me, and then do what you will. Shah-Ir didn't waste any time and readily accepted Einhorn's surrender. Fighting for you, your majesty. Seeing Shur's decisiveness, Einhorn readily bowed and saluted, then left with the elven guards and joined the Constant Kingdom's army, replacing Arad's, who had had enough fun, from the front line. The reason why Einhorn joined Shah-Ir was also very simple. The hunter path always requires war. Without large-scale war, sequence 3. How does the war bishop digest his potion? He needs a large army as a backing to unleash his true strength. In the entire northern continent, only the kingdom of Constantine and the kingdom of Solomon have this foundation. The gods' kingdom on earth is not small, but the church's organization in this regard is slightly worse, and the church is a self-contained system, so it is not easy for foreign hunters to gain a foothold. If they have to choose, of course they will choose the 2 major kingdoms that occupy the main attacking position. The reason for not choosing the kingdom of Solomon is very simple. The Red Angel, Medici is the king of angels in the hunter path. Einhorn would rather choose to stay in the kingdom of Constant with Soren. At least there is not such a big gap between him and Soren. Going to the kingdom of Solomon would be just asking for trouble. He just made a simple test and found that the king of Storm Path was very much to his liking. There aren't so many things. After Arad's returned, he said to Shar, "Your Majesty, this war will probably not last long. Once Solomon ascends to the Black Emperor, the war will end immediately." Yes, the outcome of the Continental War depends solely on the outcome of the Divine War. The Solomon Kingdom might even try to turn around and destroy us. Shah-Ir knew it, Rhodes knew it, and all high-sequence Beyonders knew it. Secular wars are only a supplement to divine wars. But becoming a god isn't that easy. Isn't it normal for the Black Emperor's godhood ritual to be sabotaged in various ways? The easiest way is publicity. Propaganda is being spread that the Kingdom of Solomon is a holy nation. King Solomon is the natural king chosen by the fallen god, the third son of God, the practitioner of God's will, responsible for spreading God's ideals and bringing the light of salvation to the world. The angel kings under God's throne are all willing to serve in the kingdom of God's Son. The word, king, is insufficient to embody the dignity of the Son of God. The Son of God, the one who practices God's will in the world, can call himself the Emperor. God bears the name of corruption, so the Emperor's title is naturally the Black Emperor. God bears the name of corruption to redeem the world, and the Emperor himself is black, willing to wash away the stigma of God for generations to come. Shah-Ir made up a story about the 3 sons of God. Rhodes' expression was as if a firework had exploded in his mind, and he didn't know if it was an illusion, but he heard the Earth Mother's laughter. He quickly shook his head and drove this horrible thought out of his mind. "Your Majesty, this is not appropriate." This was a subtle admonition from the most loyal steward and knight. It is really inappropriate to spread rumors like this. Not to mention how much of a blow it can cause to the Black Emperor who is preparing for the deification ceremony. Spreading rumors like this may directly offend the entire family of the fallen god, a giant true god, 4 angel kings, a Black Emperor who is preparing to become a god, and even the mother goddess of earth may not be able to withstand the revenge. It doesn't matter. This is just a guess, a beautification, a praise. The Solomon family calls themselves the Black Emperor. Their most stable and core territory is the former diocese of the fallen god. The angel king of the fallen god did provide assistance to the Solomon family, and the belief in the fallen god is also the mainstream belief in the Solomon Empire. I think this kind of legend will satisfy those commoners who believe in the fallen god or the House of Solomon. It's called a powerful alliance. The northern continent has never had an emperor. Without a reasonable explanation, how can commoners know why an emperor is more noble than a king? Shah rejected Rhodes's advice and ordered the rumor to be spread. He didn't put too much effort into it, mainly because the fanatical followers of the fallen god also thought it made sense. Chapter 195 Chick, who is not inferior to others. As a result, the legend about Solomon and the Black Emperor spread widely in the northern continent. Many versions have been updated. For example, the rigorous faction in Redemption of the Rose feels that this statement is not accurate enough. God's eldest son Adam and God's second son Ammon are both clear sons of God, the real sons of God, and great beings at the level of the King of Angels. Although Solomon gained the recognition of God by his bravery and was willing to practice God's will and spread God's faith, but at most he is an adopted son. These fanatical believers of the strict faction did not feel that the Solomon family was wrong. God loves the world, and although he is an adopted son, God will also bestow due care. The forces that believe in the fallen God are more accepting of Solomon, and they also began to call the Solomon family the Holy Solomon family. This rumor spread very quickly in the kingdom of Solomon. The common people who believed in the fallen god thought that it was reasonable for God to adopt him as his own son, otherwise he would not have received the support of the fallen god and the angel kings. The common people who believed in the Solomon family also thought it made sense. No wonder the king called himself the Black Emperor. The Son of God should indeed have a unique title. The rumor was timed perfectly, breaking out when the Solomon family was promoting the Black Emperor. These extraordinary individuals from the lawyer path wanted to stop the rumor, but found they couldn't, because the believers of the fallen god felt that there was nothing wrong with the kingdom of Solomon, also known as the Holy Kingdom. These believers in the fallen god even took the initiative to start promoting this. Faced with this situation, even the more or less crazy fallen god would find it difficult to explain. We cannot admit it, as it is not good, nor can we deny it, as it will affect unity. Ouroboros, the angel of fate, accompanied the fallen god and pretended not to know about this. The red angel Medici laughed uncontrollably. If he hadn't been stopped by the fallen god, he would have wanted to go find Solomon and ask him how he felt. Of God's two true sons, one chose to turn a blind eye, while the other was somewhat amused and even sent his clone to help spread the rumor. Playing different roles, they argued on the conspicuous streets about whether Solomon was God's biological son, his adopted son, or just trying to get attention. Inside an underground mausoleum near the North Continent Sea, Solomon sat on the black iron throne and looked towards the west with an expressionless face. As the king of angels of the lawyer path, Solomon certainly knew that this was a very clumsy means of provocation, and his purpose was to set the tone of the subordinate relationship between the Black Emperor and the fallen god in advance. The kingdom of Solomon is now in a critical period of cooperation with the fallen god. At this time, such sarcastic rumors can only be dealt with coldly. I wanted to reserve a duke's place for you. Solomon closed his eyes, feeling the people's calls and praises for the Black Emperor. Few people knew that the new order Solomon wanted to establish was not an asymmetrical system at all. He didn't need to go through so much trouble. Establishing a unified kingdom among a number of scattered parishes and states was itself a new order. If the kingdom of Constant had not been established in advance, the kingdom of Solomon, as a latecomer, would have needed to make distinctions in other places, and Solomon would have been promoted to the Black Emperor even earlier. The Black Emperor's deification ceremony is so troublesome. Shah was not completely idle either. After Rhodes replaced him as the governor of the Kingdom of Constantia, he felt more relaxed and even made contact with the witch family. The witch family was established as early as the beginning of the Fourth Era and has developed well over the past few decades. If Shah-Ir is excluded, the Moss ascetic order of the same period is far inferior to the current witch family. The witch family may have been established earlier than the Dusk Hermit order. Through a saint from the witch family, Shah-Ir easily met the current Chike in the mirror world. This guy looks very beautiful, and the roars of the snake heads on his long black hair are so beautiful. After just one glance, Shah-Ir was roughly certain that Chick and Triss were definitely not the same type of people, and they had different scripts. Although both of them were tricked by the witch path, Chick got the script of the chosen heroine. She was able to pick up Lilith's hair before the Fourth Era, and the witch path has a strong survival ability. Chick probably has not suffered any grievances, and it does not look like she has endured humiliation to get to where she is today. With Shah-Ir's current Sequence 2 strength, he would probably be held down and beaten by Chike. Angel King, he said with a little surprise. During this period, there are probably only 3 Angel Kings of the new era, Mr. Men, Chick, and Solomon. This is understandable. If Chike had not maintained an absolute advantage, Soren and Einhorn in the original time and space would definitely try to switch to Sequence 1 through the general witch upgrade path when they were at Sequence 2. They themselves have some needs to restore their female identity, and changing paths will be a good thing for Soren and Einhorn. One will turn to the witch path and become the Angel King, and the other will stay in the hunter path and become the Angel King. Later, they will have more options in the competition with Medici and Chick. If you don't do this, it's probably because you don't have the opportunity, not because you don't think of it. These two were able to survive in the Solomon Empire and even withstand the work pressure of Medici to become Sequence 1 conquerors. This shows that the witch path next door really has no chance, even if the Solomon Empire has been suppressing the witch family. Is that all you have to say? When the domineering boss Chike saw Shah-Ir looking at him rudely, his face turned a little ugly. Anyone who dared to look at her so recklessly should die. Boom! A roar like an explosion. However, it was at the level of fate, as if the end of the world had come, and the mirror world around began to collapse. Chike has a really strong sense of self-esteem now. Or should I say that I have a stronger sense of shame? Shah-Ir had no fear. Earth, water, fire and wind surrounded him, stabilizing the void and preventing it from collapsing. The storm path represents the omniscient and omnipotent material realm, but it is not limited to discharging electricity, blowing wind and diving. More development will always lead to the discovery of other ways to play. When Chick saw that Shah-Ir not only refused to lie down and take the beating, but also dared to resist and fight back, he became even more ruthless. This sister is not afraid of the title of the Earth Mother Goddess's favorite at all, and she attacks with all her strength. After all, the witch's ability to protect her life is very strong. Now Chike is not afraid of anything, and even a true god is not easy to kill. It seems that whether facing a man or a woman, fighting is the most suitable way to communicate. A chaotic light flashed in Shah-Ir's eyes, and the lightning exploding around him wiped out the plague that could even corrode angels. The witch's doomsday authority is a higher authority than disaster. But now, Shah-Ir has relied on the power of the Chaos Sea to be promoted from a Sequence 2 scourge to the Angel King of the Storm Path. Thor is happy to meet the witch who created the plague. Chapter 196 Excellent Social Skills. When she felt a sense of fullness all over her body, facing the imposing old girl with snake hair in front of her, Shah-Ir's eyes, which were bewildered by the sea of chaos, could no longer turn into circular eyes. Her feminine charm should stop here for now, as this was a long-awaited social occasion for men. Shah-Ir used the lightning storms that he released indiscriminately to penetrate countless mirror images of chicks. The witch's attacks always looked beautiful and deadly. In addition to the same degree of destruction that was returned, all kinds of curses, plagues, and weaknesses never stopped for a moment. These negative curses didn't have much effect. After all, the negative buff Shah-Ir was carrying was much stronger than these lower-level curses. The highest level of pollution was a terrifying curse in itself, and curses could sometimes conflict with each other. Chike didn't gain any advantage, but the look she gave the elf was even more fiery than before. The deification ritual of Sequence 0 of the Witch Path required one to actively go to the center of the earth and accept the pollution of the Chaos Sea, without falling or being alienated. This deification ritual had originally made Chike very conflicted. The angels who had seen the second blasphemous slate basically knew what the Chaos Sea meant. It was the legacy of the Old Ones, and the core of the original god, one of the three pillars. The Beyonders of all five families avoided it. Now she had to go underground to find the Chaos Sea for free. If Chike is really the kind of cute brother who has suffered humiliation to climb to his current position, he can just kill Sha'ir and have a chance to be infected by the pollution of the Chaos Sea. This is much safer than facing the Chaos Sea directly, and it is also very simple. Once the witch takes off her long skirt, who would not be interested except the hypocritical and the really bad? It just so happens that Chike's career has been smooth sailing since her debut. Although she was careless when she was young and was forcibly changed at Sequence 7, the pride in her heart always exists. Feminization is just an accident. I know I'm pretty, but no one can touch me. My beauty can only be appreciated by me. I will kill anyone who dares to touch my body. Chike has an extremely clear self-awareness. Even if she can't get what she wants from Sha'ir in one go. But Sha'ir's value in her eyes was not affected at all. This was a living angel polluted by the Chaos Sea, and he had enormous research and reference value to her. The only person Chike knew of who was related to the Chaos Sea was the fallen creator. But she obviously had no intention of submitting to him. At most, she would go to the center of the earth. What kind of witch would she be if she didn't have a sense of adventure? What Mr. Chi despises most is people who are hesitant and cautious. So, when Chike's attitude changed, Sha'ir could clearly feel that the ferocious expression on the face of the witch who had been as fierce as a storm just now softened a little, and she looked at Sha'ir as if she was looking at a treasure-giving boy. What you need will come true. Chike has always been confident in his good luck. At this time, Sha'ir also felt that there was no need to continue fighting, so he decided to stop. After all, fighting with the witch was quite boring. As scoundrel as the fool, he can't be killed by his various stands. But the moment their eyes met, these two angels, who had risen smoothly at full speed thanks to their recklessness, seemed to have some kind of connection. Whether it was Sha'ir or Chike, they both preferred to beat up the person they were talking to first before communicating. It was just that the target this time was not easy to deal with. After the two men made eye contact, they realized that they were the same type of people, so their actions, which had originally been intended to stop, became ruthless again. Both of them grew up quickly by relying on luck and eating randomly to survive, first gathering those high-level characteristics and then securing their upper ecological niche. Chike is one of those lucky guys who has a lot of luck and courage. Sha'ir's growth path is also very clear. If he were thrown into the slums or the bottom of society, he would probably be lost in the crowd or die in a stinking ditch. He does not have the determination and will to fight his way out of the bottom, and he has always been very clear about this. He doesn't have the ability, he's just a speculator. If you have nothing at the beginning, then believe in the hidden sage and rely on the gift of the evil god to quickly get rid of the vicious curse of working hard and being poor at the bottom of the society. Be it evil gods, foreign gods, or pollution. Just take any power that is given for free, because this power is gained by selling humanity. As for the cost later, it doesn't matter. I'll find a way to solve it later. Although the personalities of these two angel kings are different, they do have some similarities to some extent. For example, in terms of social interaction, both of them have certain flaws. They both think that as long as they beat the other party and show enough strength, the other party will have to listen to them no matter how unhappy they are. Chike's other purpose was to test Sha'ir's strength. She was still relatively restrained. Although she used her hands very hard to make Sha'ir lie down and sleep for a while, she only wanted to beat him for another minute. After all, the contamination of the source material became more and more serious with use. Chick was also worried that this excellent research subject would waste his limited life on his meaningless temptations. The female head of the witch family did not find it strange that Shah-Ir could exert the power of the Angel King. This is the effect of the contamination of the source material. As long as you are not afraid of death, this level of improvement can be considered conservative. Chick had speculated that the true gods of all 5 families, including the eternal blazing sun, the god of knowledge and wisdom, and the Lord of Storms, should be able to create a Sequence 2 clone, or create a divine vessel to access the power of the Chaos Sea. The 3 gods could also use this method to increase their compatibility with the source essence. This is also the solution that Chick came up with, which is to let the clone come into contact with the underground pollution. This may be better than directly contacting the Chaos Sea. Although the main body will also be affected more and more seriously over time, the fault tolerance rate is higher. Shah-Ir's method is relatively useless in the eyes of the true God. The incarnation of the true God does not need the power of the Chaos Sea to exert the combat power of the Angel King level. Borrowing the power of the Chaos Sea in this way is equivalent to borrowing usury, which is completely not worth the loss. After the 2 fought intensely for a minute, neither of them really hurt the other, and then they stopped almost at the same time. Chick restored the broken world in the mirror and conjured up a long jade table and high-backed chairs for reception. Shah-Ir took out the fine wine brewed by the Pope of the Earth. Chick conjured up 2 high-heeled glasses. As the glasses clinked together and the wine swayed, the atmosphere became strangely harmonious. Although both of them felt a little regretful that they could not beat the other to his knees, seeing that the other party was sensible, they were still quite satisfied with this social outcome. Chapter 197 The Witch's Killing Intent. I also know a little about the Witch Path's godhood ritual. I can provide you with a relatively safe method of holding a simple deification ceremony, but you will also have to pay the corresponding fee. Since the initial negotiations went smoothly, Shah-Ir went straight to the point. What do you want in return? Chick didn't like riddles or witty remarks either, so she put down her glass and asked the price directly. The elder sister was not worried that the elf in front of her would dare to cheat her. In Chick's opinion, Shah-Ir would have to pay a huge price to borrow the power of the Chaos Sea. The combat power of this Angel King was definitely not permanent, and the other party did not dare to offend her, the Angel King, easily. I want a copy of the Beander characteristics of the Thief's Path Sequence One-Time Worm. Shah-Ir quoted a fairly reasonable price. He really wanted a copy of the Time Worm's extraordinary characteristics, and Chick should be able to get it with some effort. 1 copy of Sequence 1. Are you sure you can help me complete the simple godhood ritual? Chick frowned slightly when he heard the price. For a Sequence 1 characteristic, it wasn't enough to just provide some intelligence and ideas, but he had the confidence to help her with her deification ceremony. She thought about it briefly and decided that this deal was not impossible. At this time, Chick had no doubt about Shah-Ir's motives. It was just a normal transaction, each getting what they needed and cooperating with each other. What other motives were needed? Soren and Einhorn are among Shah-Ir's subordinates. So what? He's not even an angel, so Chick doesn't take him seriously at all. She simply chose to ignore the 2 hunters, and only the Red Angel Medici was a threat. The beginning of the storm's path is the Sea Blessed. The Chaos Sea is also a sea. I can use some special methods to simulate the aura and power of the Chaos Sea. Because I'm really polluted. Shah-Ir's argument made sense. After all, he was truly contaminated. Chick had even managed to drink his blood and see some results. Besides, Shah-Ir had personally purified, screened, and filtered it. Wild water sources, while dangerous, could be guaranteed safe after being handled by professionals. You seem to be in great need of the high-level Beander characteristics of the Thief's Path. Seeing that Shah-Ir was so frank, Chick thought she had figured out some of Shah-Ir's true intentions. The characteristics of the Thief's Path that Shah-Ir wanted might be used to save lives or have other important uses. So, now he is still begging me. The witch sat lazily back in the high-back chair, with her legs casually crossed, as if she was seriously considering this proposal. The witch family also had its own intelligence network. Chick knew that the only high-ranking figure in the thieves' path at this time, apart from the renowned second son of God, blasphemer, and angel of time, Amen, was probably the Zoroaster family who had recently joined the kingdom of Solomon. There may be other high-ranking people, but these two are the only famous ones. The time angel Amen is also the king of angels. He is not easy to deal with, but Zoroaster is not that difficult to deal with. Then let's cooperate. Chike chose to cooperate because she also needed Shah-Ir to provide her with more support. Even though she is now the king of angels, the sequence 1 characteristics in her body have not been fully digested. Chike eats the special features very quickly. She eats them right away without thinking about eating the second portion after digesting the first portion. She also believes in eating first and then talking about it. After eating, she doesn't have to worry about the special features taking away her food. She can also take advantage of the first mover advantage and better aggregate it into other parts. There are 3 ways to upgrade the Sequence 1 Doomsday Witch. The first is the alternation of eras, the second is the Omen of Doom, and the third is participating in the God's Fall event. Chike was able to be promoted because of the alternation of the 3rd and 4th eras, and the general idea for digesting the Doomsday Witch's potion is the same. The witch family doing things on their own is one idea, and cooperating with the kingdoms on the mainland to do things is another idea. Even just adding fuel to the fire will help speed up the digestion of the potion. Cooperate. A deal is a deal. Shah-Ir shook his head decisively. He didn't want to be called a collaborator who was assassinated. So it's better not to cooperate, just be well and don't drag anyone down. I know. Chick nodded indifferently. She knew the reputation of the witch family. The elves meant nothing more than a tacit understanding, but they had to draw a clear line between each other. He was the majestic King Constant, and she was a witch who spread disasters. Neither of them should interfere with the other's normal life. Although the elf's words were a bit rude, she was not annoyed. After looking at the elf's increasingly gentle face, her mood became cheerful instead. This place was considered the witch's territory, a place where only female creatures could survive. Men who stayed here would develop feminine tendencies. Although this process wasn't as obvious when facing angels, Chick still enjoyed this conversation process. She even felt like she could talk a little longer. This is the witch's recognition and friendship. The characteristics I want, you don't need my help to get them, do you? Shah didn't really want to kill Zoroaster's ancestor with his own hands, but that was all he wanted to do. I can handle it myself. If you participate, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Chick said, shaking his head slightly. While the 2 angel kings were more stable, exposing the Sure Elf's origins and connection to the Chaos Sea would inevitably cause considerable trouble. Chike didn't want his tool to be snatched away by the other, great beings, from the 5 families. Good. Shah-Ir nodded. Although he knew that Chike's move might not be stable, it didn't matter. Shah-Ir didn't think about collecting 2 copies of Sequence 1 of the Thief's Path. This was of no use in the 4th era, and the 3 strange families in the 4th era could not become gods. The Hermit's hard power is sufficient. 2 copies of the Thief's Path's Sequence 1 characteristics are of little help to a true god, and it would be a waste not to use the Beander characteristics. After the 2 finished talking, Shah-Ir had no intention of staying any longer, but before leaving, his eyes flickered, and he saw the reflection behind the witch, through the chaos. That was the man in the mirror of the Doom Witch, the male version of the original Chick. At this moment, the male Chick was looking at the back of the Doom Witch, with an obsessed look. When he noticed Shah-Ir's gaze, the male Chick's eyes became particularly fierce. I almost want to choose the person I like. It seems that male Chike has a very strong possessiveness. He equally hates all men who come close to the witch. I'm sorry to have embarrassed you. These are some negative effects based on divinity. Facing the prying eyes, the witch showed an impeccable smile. No one can refuse. It's human nature. Shah-Ir understood very well and disappeared immediately. When he left, the witch's expression instantly became extremely gloomy. She turned around and looked at the face she used to have, the obsessed expression on the man Chike in the mirror, and the loving eyes. The witch's eyes could not hide the murderous intent. Chapter 198 My Brother's Friend. The Fifth Age. A lot of things happened during this time. Shah Ayar had heard rumors that the Black Emperor, a thief, had robbed and killed the human trafficker Kappan, looted all the wealth in the villa, and rescued some poor girls in the process. Even though Inz-el had helped the Loan royal family use the undead to build the mausoleum, the chain of interests behind it could not be broken easily. The roguish thief, Black Emperor also made the front pages of newspapers for certain political purposes. Prince Edisik repeatedly criticized this behavior in public and vowed to get to the bottom of it. In the end, the unlucky ones were naturally some lesser-known characters. A thorough investigation is impossible because there are too many people involved, which could easily affect the unity within Rune. It's okay to shout slogans. Although the third prince was hesitant towards his superiors and had compassion for his subordinates, he struck hard at his subordinates, and those black gloves who did the dirty work and whom he hated died very smoothly. In addition to those who were tried by Rune's new law, some were killed by the Black Emperor, a thief. Klein himself didn't know what was going on with those chivalrous thieves and the Black Emperor. This Black Emperor, who was always wiping his ass, became popular for a while. It was obviously a copycat crime, but the authorities seemed to be blind, and even the words in the newspapers were very consistent. This self-directed and self-acted drama is like closing an account, and all the clues are gone. This allowed Klein to see in the newspapers every morning that his vests were robbing the rich and setting fires, all night long. No one knows that when one wants to capture the Black Emperor, there is a very small chance that one will encounter the real quasi-Black Emperor. Although Klein was speechless, there was nothing he could do. His life as a private detective continued as usual. For example, he accompanied Dr. Allen, who was suspected of being cursed, to visit Will Ossepton but came up empty-handed. I used 1,000 paper cranes to divine at night and dreamed of a little Will avoiding another huge mercury snake. The other members have also developed. Leonard finally passed the Red Gloves test and followed Captain Soster to Backland. Audrey officially joined the Psychological Alchemist Society and first came into contact with her cheap teacher Dorian Abraham. Shah Ayar didn't have much to do in the Church of Night. Every day he just went to get off work as usual, and then used roads to closely monitor Mr. Fool's daily life. Although he traveled through time a little early and missed the popular animation of Lord of Mysteries, the Archangel in the audience's path was also past the age of watching cartoons. He now watches Klein's World every day. The real Melissa is not as cute as in the animation. She is just an engineering girl who doesn't mind the smell of engine oil and is delighted when the mechanical turtle she made moves. If Melissa really joined the Mechanicum, she would probably be very popular. Shah Ayar has also had a lot of dealings with the Steam Church. Although the Steam Church also believes in gender equality, there are really not many women in it. If a girl like Melissa, who is a bit weak and can match the thinking of the engineering man of the Steam Church, joins. The care she received from her elders, it's no exaggeration to say, was more than the care she received from her biological brother, Klein. Not only can she provide positive emotional feedback to the Steam Church members, but she is also genuinely passionate, eager to learn, and talented. Shah Ayar only mentioned it to Captain Ekenzer Bernard during a private dinner, and this butler, a man of excellent character, showed great interest. When Shah Ayar went to Congressman Matcht's house to attend various banquets, he also mentioned Melissa's name to Mr. Portland Mormont, who also lived on the same street. This person was a member of the Loan Royal Academy of Sciences. Putting aside the 7 lights of the spirit realm and, in human beings, like Emperor Russell, he was already a leader among humans in the scientific community. He will soon serve as the president of Backland Institute of Technology. He is a believer of the Steam Church and a non-staff member of the Steam Church, and he has embarked on an extraordinary journey. If Shah Ayar mentioned it, Melissa would be more likely to be noticed. After all, this is a university with good prospects. There are countless talented students among them. Ordinary talents will not be so eye-catching here. Although Melissa's character is tough, she is not that lively and outgoing. It is enough for Shah to mention it so that her efforts can be better seen. She doesn't need any extra care either. This girl is obviously a model sister who can support her two good-for-nothing brothers after graduation. One day, when Shah was watching a live broadcast, he felt that something was missing from Mr. Fool, so he turned his gaze to the mirror in his home that was broadcasting live. Erodes understood immediately. It also likes the feeling of supporting newcomers. So, dear master, your loyal servant Erodes is at your service. Klein just happened to meet the very useful Erodes. He even thought for a moment that the mirror's humility must have revealed something about his being a fool. Not to mention the strength of this magic mirror. When Klein was threatened by the Apostle of Desire, he wanted to take advantage of the situation and thought of this mirror. Thus, Jason Belia, Sequence 5 of the Devil's Path, was opened. Klein looked at the unaware demon appearing in the mirror and fell silent. Thursday, December 16th. Duke Negan was assassinated by the Apostle of Desire. Although Duke Negan didn't have to die under the current political situation, he died anyway. Perhaps the Twilight Hermit felt that the atmosphere was worthy of this. Jason Belia fled into the sewer immediately. Obviously, the person who died was an important believer of the Church of Storms, and the assassination happened near the Holy Wind Cathedral. No matter how you look at it, it should be the Church of Storms that should handle the aftermath, but the Nighthawks still received the mission. This time, Leonard and his team are in charge of the mission. Leonard, wearing the seal 1-42, can effectively lock the enemy's position. After all, this is a high-level seal of the warrior path. Shah was originally following behind, but halfway through, he heard some noises and changed direction with his men, intending to encircle them. His ability to hide in the shadows and transform into flesh and blood immediately shook off the normal people of the Church of Evernight and blocked the Black Emperor, who had completed the kill achievement. The tarot cards scattered on the ground were enough to prove the other party's identity. Shah wanted to be polite, but the figure in front of him disappeared. Klein didn't even look at who was blocking him. Ever since he was caught by Huang Beibei last time, his vigilance had been extremely high. No matter who is blocking him, it doesn't matter whether he can defeat him or not, Mr. K will just return to the city. Not really. Shah was completely overwhelmed by Klein's flashback. There are not so many mysterious queens in this world. He had originally wanted to use his identity as a deacon of the Church of Evernight to invite the Black Emperor, the thief, to become an informant for the Church of Evernight, giving Klein a chance to slowly return to the system. What now? Chapter 199 Go Sanjia Must Lick. At the other end of the passage, Leonard, wearing heavy armor, ran over with a grunt. You did it. Leonard looked at the body on the ground and asked with some hope. The Black Emperor did it. And I don't know what method he used to take away the Beander characteristics that were extracted. Shah said helplessly with his hands spread out. If Klein, who was above the gray fog, heard what Shah said at this moment, he would probably die of anger. After all, they are from the same unit. This Black Emperor. And these tarot cards. Leonard was so angry. He went on a mission fully armed, but ended up accomplishing nothing. How did he get away? At this time, Spirit Witch, Soster asked. He knew Shah-Ir's ability, how could this Black Emperor escape from him? He just vanished in a flash, just like those spirit beings. Shah-Ir spread his hands helplessly. Since the Black Emperor, the chivalrous thief, didn't want to return to the system at the moment, he would continue to take the blame. This is good for everyone. This extraordinary ability is somewhat similar to the Wraith. Spirit Witch, Soster frowned. His movements were strange, unlike a physical entity, accelerating the emergence of his extraordinary characteristics, and being able to escape into the spirit world. This was too much like a ghost. Shah-Ir was not idle. He summoned 2 shadow servants to dig a hole in the ground, untied the Eye of Wind from his waist and threw it into the bottom of the hole, then looked at Leonard, whose face was as red as a boiled shrimp. If you don't jump into the pit now, you will be cooked soon. The poet also looked at Shah-Ir with gratitude, then immersed himself in the pit. The water temperature in the pit rose instantly. Fortunately, the eye of the wind still has the ability to control the water temperature. Shah-Ir looked at Leonard, who was bubbling, and thought of the grandfather in this guy. He felt it was quite strange. Obviously, the death of the ancestor of the Zoroast family might have something to do with himself, but he did not feel any guilt or anything like that. Moreover, he actually felt that Pale Solinazd had no grudge against him at all. Then again, during the Fifth Age, Amon's true form was mainly active in the God-forsaken land, right? How did this old man get injured like this? He was injured so badly, he must have been beaten by the Angel King. Since you are not strong enough, why don't you just openly join a true god? Wouldn't that be more comfortable than secretly playing a tacit understanding with the goddess of night? Since you've already invested, just do it. If you really behave well, it is not impossible for little Zeratul, and Banu, and Haya to feed you. After all, who knows whether Saphira Castle will definitely send out a third traverser, and when will they send out the third traverser? Shah-Ir actually didn't quite understand. If he really wanted to lick someone, the Fifth Era had already passed 1,300 years ago. If he had pledged allegiance earlier and used 1,000 years to show his abilities, he would definitely have had a good position. As for the Archangel, would it be embarrassing to lick him? Wake up, the three Gui families still have some shame, are you kidding me? As long as you have normal loyalty to the Goddess of Night, and the loyalty of allies in the same camp to their leader, you may be able to taste the mysterious waiter characteristics that little Zeratul tasted 200 years ago. Once the mystic servant's characteristics are used, you can use the power of the time worm to split your identity out. The clone is relatively independent, and there are many operations you can play. Wouldn't it be nice to be a backup for the Goddess of Night? At worst, as long as you surpass Sequence 1, it will be easy to turn against them later. Shah-Ir really couldn't understand why someone had to suffer so much when he could just be a spare tire and a bootlicker. The original bodies of the seven gods cannot come down from the astral realm, and a Sequence 1 with so many clones is not afraid of being wiped out by the Church. Why not join? The highest level in the Church of the Seven Gods is Sequence 2. What kind of life would a Sequence 1 angel lead? What's the point of this attitude of wanting secret asylum, not wanting to join, and wanting to keep delaying? What are you staring at Leonard for? Red Gloves Captain Sost walked up to Shah-Ir and asked. Nothing, I was just wondering, this guy doesn't really think that we're taking a fancy to him by letting him wear this level 1 seal. Isn't this clearly a sign of caring for newcomers? Shah-Ir looked at his poet classmate who was still at the bottom of the pit and blamed himself for not playing a big role, and said softly. Don't say that. This kind of experience of personally experiencing a level 1 seal is invaluable. Soest coughed lightly, although the negative effects of sealed artifact 1 to 42 were indeed very uncomfortable. You have to understand that, too. The difficulties of middle-aged men. Even the extraordinary ones can't stand this kind of torture. Soest gave Shale a look. Since they haven't caught him yet, let's leave the investigation and follow-up work to the Storm Church. Shall we go back and have a drink? Shah-Ir picked up a Sequence 5 characteristic and planned to treat everyone when he returned. The Church of Storms will definitely continue to investigate, so let's do it. Soest gave a knowing smile. Although this operation did not achieve any results, it was still considered as attendance. It's fine as long as the Apostle of Desire is dead. The Black Emperor is not on the Red Gloves mission list. If there's a chance, investigate it. If not, forget it. We can't waste the precious resources of the Church of the Righteous God. Donations from believers cannot be wasted like this. When Leonard climbed out of the pit panting, 2 Red Gloves pulled off the silver armor on Leonard's body and sealed it up. Shah-Ir's shadow servant picked up the seal he had discarded and wiped it clean. The people from the Church of Storms took away all the remnants from the scene and memorized the tarot cards there. Above the gray fog, Klein sighed at how useful the Sequence 7 magician's extraordinary ability was. The next day, Aurora will claim responsibility for the death of Duke Negan. This was the result of a unanimous discussion among the top leaders of Rune. Shah-Ir felt that this was to fool the people, to suppress the heat, and to divert the conflict. Duke Negan is the largest land noble in the Kingdom of Lowen besides the king. The sky-high traffic that only a duke could have obtained after his death, is now wanted by the Aurora Society alone to take it all. So, the Blood Cult claimed responsibility for the death of Lord Negan. The School of the Rose claimed responsibility for the death of Duke Negan. The Spiritual Order, the Moss Ascetic Order, the Secret Order, the Iron Cross claimed responsibility. Later, the 4 kings and 7 generals of the sea, embassies of various countries, and others all claimed responsibility for the death of Duke Negan. It's just a rumor anyway. Aurora Club didn't really come out to claim responsibility. The citizens of Backland had become immune to all sorts of news. They were almost amused by it. When a Duke of Lowen died, all sorts of errand boys came clamoring to claim him, including small pirates at sea, lawless elements of poor reputations in other countries, and secret organizations. Shah-Ir just started the rumor, and the chaos that followed was based on the belief that the law would not hold everyone responsible. It is said that Duke Negan's younger brother, the current Prime Minister of Rune, was so angry that he went to the palace to meet George III at night. Which serious old Lowen noble would be provoked like this? There are even rumors that MI9 has claimed responsibility for this. It's outrageous. His Majesty the King will certainly not sit idly by. Chapter 200 A Kick of Justice. Monday, December 20th. Detective Sherlock Moriarty, who missed the Church of Knight's second attempt to recruit him, became an informant for the Church of Steam and regained his official identity. In the morning, Klein went to the Sacred Heart Cathedral of the Mechanicus Church and received a substantial reward. After returning to his residence, Klein summoned a Rhodes, which of course would be successful. After all, Klein had just come into contact with Deacon Ekenzer. Even if a Rhodes didn't pay attention to Klein, he would definitely pay attention to Deacon Ekenzer's recent situation. I want to know the identity of this lady. Klein briefly described Huang Bei's appearance. It's a good thing that he doesn't have any spiritual projection in reality, otherwise the mysterious queen might have come to him via the internet. Let's see how this, Uncle Joe, is going to explain and whether he dares to call himself an uncle in front of her. The silver light on the mirror fluctuated, and a line of words appeared. Respected Master, this is the mysterious Queen of the 5 Seas. I suggest you avoid asking about him in the real world, or you might attract the attention of the Prophet. Rhodes made a subtle suggestion. The hermit path is very sensitive to its own information. Combined with the ability of the Prophet, it is actually possible to sense things related to its own information. Klein was stunned when he saw this word. An angel. How is that possible? I see. What do you know about her? Klein asked, feigning calmness. She was once the eldest princess of the Intis Empire. The eldest daughter of Emperor Russell Gustav. The words on the magic mirror changed rapidly. The Emperor's daughter. No wonder she's so familiar with the blasphemous cards. But if she is the Emperor's daughter, then wouldn't he have suffered an unprovoked disaster? I see. That's all for this time. Klein felt as if he had accidentally gotten into conflict with his allies, but he still forced himself to remain calm. Dear Master, I look forward to serving you next time. A stick figure waving his hand floated by. This mirror knows a lot. Klein almost blurted out the word, hard work, on the tip of his tongue. After Rhodes left, the mirror returned to normal. Klein went to the bathroom, took 4 steps counterclockwise, and performed a luck-changing ritual to arrive above the gray fog. Sitting in the fool's seat, looking at the Black Emperor card that was obviously true. She came to the Great Emperor Memorial Exhibition, and I was just unlucky enough to see her. This blasphemy card, the Emperor's daughter couldn't possibly be without one. Did she give it to me in the end, hoping to establish a basis for cooperation and exchange the intelligence we both hold on the Emperor? How did she know I was helpful? A seer. A spiritual intuition. Klein roughly sorted out his thoughts, but he felt that this world was a little too magical. The emperor's eldest daughter is an angel, and the emperor's youngest son is also an angel written into the holy book of Steam and revered by believers. 2 angels from one family. What level is the emperor himself? At worst, she's a sequence 2 angel, right? Sequence 1 is unlikely. After all, the god of Steam is pressing on, unless the emperor changes his route. Even a great emperor like this could be assassinated. Klein was a little confused. During the great emperor's reign, the Intis Empire was very powerful and was even the first to open up routes to explore the southern continent. According to historical records, after the great emperor's coup, he promulgated the civil code to encourage and protect business, which promoted the development of the Church of the Eternal Sun. This was beneficial to the Church of the Eternal Sun, and the Church of the Eternal Sun also acquiesced to the great emperor's rule. The Intis Empire had not suffered any defeat in foreign wars. Even though the emperor in the later period was somewhat foolish and indulged in large-scale construction and building wonders, which put some pressure on the domestic economy, it was still in a better state than the previous Intis kingdom. Why did the Eternal Sun Church suddenly turn against it? Klein has read some analytical papers by historians, and what they say makes some sense. But it is difficult to explain from the perspective of the mysterious world. The Orthodox Church usually does not participate in the internal affairs of the kingdom, otherwise the Sauron family would not have stepped down so easily. If Shah-Ir knew this question, he would probably laugh. Why did the Church of the Eternal Sun choose to turn against them? Because Emperor Russell changed his path and was promoted to Black Emperor. What kind of person is the Black Emperor? Doesn't the Eternal Sun Church, which once supported a Black Emperor, know this? The 7 gods are all building a barrier in the Star Kingdom, and a real god, Black Emperor, appears in the northern continent. This guy's growth trajectory is still the standard template of an ambitious person, and it is impossible for Osakis not to feel disgusted. Klein didn't know this, he could only make guesses based on historical records whose authenticity was unknown. For example, the Church of the Eternal Sun wanted the emperor to openly believe in the sun, but the emperor delayed for several years. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Tarot Club. Illusory figures appeared in the ancient giant's palace. This time, from the very beginning, there were several glances at Mr. Fool. Both Audrey and Alger were able to obtain first-hand information about the assassination of Duke Negan. This incident also involved the Black Emperor, a thief, and an organization related to tarot cards. Isn't this a coincidence? Alger lowered his eyes slightly. Mr. Fool indeed had many followers under his command. Whether it was the God of Death, or the current Black Emperor, they were all terrifyingly powerful. Good afternoon, Mr. Fool. Good afternoon, Mr. Angel. Audrey's voice was less cheerful, mainly because the recent rumors against the Negan family made her, an absolute aristocrat, instinctively feel unhappy. Fortunately, MI9 intervened quickly and the news was quickly brought under control. The lady in the audience instinctively paid attention to the reactions of other members. Little Sun looked calm, and it seemed that nothing had happened to him. Although the magician lady was relaxed, she also showed some melancholy. Perhaps it was because she had accepted some of Abraham's conditions when she became his student. Mr. World was as gloomy as ever, and it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Mr. Angel. Oh. Mr. Angel is looking at me. Audrey's eyes met Shah-Ir's, and her audience sensitivity allowed her to immediately read the meaning. Caught you again. Audrey leaned forward slightly, expressing her dissatisfaction with subtle movements. Shah-Ir suddenly thought of something, and then took advantage of the cover of the bronze table to kick Miss Justice next to him. After kicking, Shah-Ir felt a little regretful. It turned out that this was how he could play at the Tarot Club. Why didn't he think of it before? It was all Klein's fault for making the atmosphere serious. Miss Justice was kicked and fell into a daze. In the noble girl's life, she had never been kicked before, and no one at the banquet would be so rude to the daughter of the Hall family. And this is the Tarot Club. Mr. Angel. Chapter 201. Disobeying the True God. It was fine if the two of them just played some audience games before, and Mr. Fool wouldn't have cared, but this time it was a bit too much, wasn't it? At this moment, Miss Justice didn't even bother to brush off the non-existent dust on her skirt. She turned her head somewhat panically to look at the figure shrouded in gray fog. Audrey couldn't see anything because of the gray mist, but she could still sense that this was Mr. Fool. It was great that Mr. Fool didn't seem angry. Audrey breathed a sigh of relief. She turned around and glared at the angel. If the occasion was right, she would definitely let Mr. Angel know the price of teasing a lady. Just wait for me. No matter what, you can't make such a joke in front of Mr. Fool. At this moment, the Fool, like the other members, looked at Miss Justice blankly. Although the Fool is the administrator of the gray fog space, he does not have the ability to see through the lens. It is difficult for him to analyze the micro-expressions of Angel and Justice. Moreover, the gray fog obscures their faces and makes it impossible to see their specific faces. Mr. Fool, I have obtained 3 new pages of Russell's diary. Miss Justice spoke first. What do you want in return? Klein asked with a smile. Consider this as payment for my last question. I also hope you'll forgive our earlier disrespect. Although Audrey was still angry, she chose to use Russell's diary to apologize to Mr. Fool. Although some diaries were wasted this time, she still has the opportunity to get more diaries from the Psychological Alchemy Society. Discourteous. What's rude? Mr. Fool was puzzled, but since he didn't have to pay any extra money, he was naturally happy to do it. Can. The Fool nodded and got the 3 diaries as he wished. Shaw-Iyer glanced at Audrey, then leaned back in the bronze chair and dozed off. Humph. Audrey hummed softly in her heart, thinking she had discovered another small flaw of the angel. Klein sighed. On January 30th, I contacted Mr. Men again. This extraordinary person, lost in darkness and trapped in lightning, seems to be very interested in the tarot cards I invented. I didn't tell him about this at all. He definitely has a way of understanding things in the real world. I asked him about the moon card. He was much more frank than the secretive Zeratul. He told me directly that the goddess of night is more compatible with the star card, and that the moon card currently has no owner, only various spokespersons. It sounds like the power of the moon has been divided up, and the night goddess may have gotten the biggest piece of the pie. After seeing the Emperor's speculation, Klein understood a little. The original moon is not really sequence 0 of the moon path. Just a part. Is there still some power in the hands of the goddess? There is only one true god, and the goddess holds part of the moon's authority. Does that mean the original moon cannot truly become a god? This is a good thing. No matter how you look at it, the original moon is like an evil god, and those who pray to it will not have a good ending. Klein continued reading the diary. He still didn't know which extraordinary path the moon corresponded to. I continued to ask, and Mr. Men told me that the night goddess, the blood clan, and the primordial moon are all representatives of the moon, but they are not the real moon. The real moon is in the sky. Don't I know the moon is in the sky? So is the relationship between the eternal blazing sun and the sun the same as the relationship between the 3-legged golden crow and the sun. The eternal blazing sun church seems to worship the sun bird. Poof. Klein almost laughed when he saw this. He now knew which path the moon path corresponded to, but the vampires had nothing to do with the lunar jade rabbit, or jade, or laurel trees. There are no vampires on the moon either. He continued to read his diary. I began to tease Mr. Men about his attitude towards the true God. He seems even less respectful of the gods than I, a former atheist. Mr. Men told me that this is the attitude of the great nobles in the 4th era toward the gods. He's really good at pretending. The Zeratul family is also a great noble family in the 4th era, and even Zeratul doesn't pretend like this. But I was very interested in the great nobles of the 4th age, so I asked about it. Mr. Men told me that in the Tudor dynasty, the strength of each angel family, including Abraham, Antigonus, Ammon, Tamara, and Jacob, is extremely terrifying. Each angel family has its own background, and they have all gone against the will of the true God. Oh my God, the angel family. That's such a cool name. And they even defied the true God. I can't help but get excited just hearing that. Mr. Men also told me that there are many angel families in the 4th era, such as the Zoroast family, which has always been loyal to the Solomon Empire, the Zarathus family, the Augustus, Soren, Einhorn, and Kastcha families of the Trunsost dynasty, and so on. Are there so many angel families? There are still quite a few of them, including the great nobles of each empire and the families within the secret organization of the True God Church. Although most of them have fallen into decline, it seems that even angel families will turn to dust over time if they are not gods. The Pope or the Holy Father of the True God Church is an angel. Don't they also go by many names? I was curious and asked about the Sauron family I overthrew. Mr. Men told me that the Sauron family is not to be feared. What is feared is the existence of the Sauron family's loyalty, although that has long since disappeared into the mist of history. This is talking about the royal family of the Truncest dynasty. I've been wondering before, the final winner of the Fourth Era was the Trunsost royal family. Why did they disappear after unifying the continent? And how did the four angel families loyal to them divide up the northern continent? Mr. Men is offline again. Why does he always seem like a prisoner who comes out to smoke a cigarette or get some fresh air? But he knows enough. He's just like the once powerful big brother in the prison. And when he mentioned the Zeratul family, there was actually a hint of contempt. This disdain may be unintentional, but why does he speak in a normal tone when he mentions Jacob's family? Didn't Zeratul tell me that the Jacob family and the Zeratul family were once similar? Could this be regional discrimination? Mr. Men has a favorable impression of the Tudor dynasty, which was mentioned first. Because they are more rebellious than the true God. Klein absorbed a huge amount of information from this diary. He found it a little difficult to imagine the glory of the great nobles in the Fourth Era. As a history buff, he had a natural interest in these past histories, which indirectly influenced Klein. There's nothing new in history. Klein compared it with China's history and came to a conclusion. The three families divided Jin. The royal family of the Trunsost dynasty expended too much power in the Fourth Era and were then eaten. The end of centralization is decentralization, and the end of unification is division. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.